Hey guys, so welcome back to another video. So I posted this photo on my Instagram and I asked, I said this was a lighting technique that I used on this set. I call it the Sunwrap. It's actually nothing new. Cinematographers, DPs, and I would assume photographers also use this technique to light their subjects. And this was a shoot that was sort of plan between me and my good friend Andrew, and we always come up with these crazy ideas, and at least we think they're crazy and good, but we'll leave it to you to decide based on the photos and some of the videos. But so with this, what we wanted to do was go with a basically behind the scenes of the behind the scenes. So imagine someone being on a Hollywood set, and the photos of this set are sort of the behind the scenes of that. And on set, we had actually a dolly track, and we had my rig, and you know, it kind of fit the sort of story that we wanted to tell with these photos. Now, to light it, my friend Andrew absolutely loves natural light or continuous light. You will rarely see him using strobes, and that's completely fine. Some photographers work differently. Some prefer strobes, some prefer continuous light. The one thing with continuous light is that these lighting sort of bulbs and pieces are a bit heavy to kind of lug around and set up, but what I think, you know, will give you a great result if done properly. I'm going to talk about the Sunwrap in this sort of photo, and how to achieve it is actually very straightforward. You can do this with interiors, you can do this with exteriors. It all depends on where your key light or the strongest source of light is. So in this photo, we'll actually jump right in here. And in this photo, you can kind of see, you know, her face is really well lit. You know where the light's coming from in this case. You've got light coming in from here on this side. You can see this nice little edge here. And you also see that her face is not in shadow, right? Her face is not in shadow. It is also well lit. So the Sunwrap is actually pretty easy. You have your strongest source of light sort of out of frame here. So this light is actually out of frame. What it is actually two 1x1 Prismo lights that are being shot through diffusion material. And this really softens up the light actually. So it's not as harsh. You're not going to get really a harsh fall off when you shoot with this light. Now you can do it without a scrim, and you'll kind of get more of a spotty kind of hot kind of type of light on your subject or whatever. But the key with this light, it's more so an edge light. It's not going to be your key, even though it is the brightest light in your frame. So we've got this sort of sunlight. I would call this the sun because it's the brightest light on set. So subsequently, what we did was we actually bounced some of that back into the talent's face, right? We used a reflector, and I think I also used a lamp that's kind of off here that's, I think, gelled with CTO to bring her face into the light, essentially. So all we've done was sort of wrapped that light around using a reflector and using another source. Essentially, we filled in sort of the shadow of her face, of her under her chin, and of this side of her face as well. If you look at this sort of wooden ball down here, you can see how the shadow wraps around compared to this wooden ball down here. The shadow doesn't wrap around as nicely. So essentially, it tells you one of two things: that there's another source pumping in some level here, and there's nothing on this side here, which is closer to the scrim. So all we really did was reflect back in that light. And what it does, it creates a bit of a nicer fall off on the shadow side. You can see this kind of melts away into the shadow and into the darkness. Now, you can have that happen, or you can really open up the reflection or the reflector and really get a real softening off across the face. Alternatively, what you can do, in this case, it worked for us because we had these sort of evergreen trees here that you see as neg, and the neg kind of sucks up all that light, so nothing gets pumped back in. So we were using those trees as sort of a negative fill to basically not have that light wrap so much around her face. It was to kind of tame that wrapping effect, to kind of get this nice sort of shadow across her face. So that's sort of the Sunwrap, and you know, everybody uses this technique. So think about what you can do if you're outside or shooting exteriors. Maybe you put the sun behind your subject, you grab a reflector, and instead of doing the opposite of a sun wrap, which is a sun sandwich, putting the reflector here and then filling in this way, maybe you want to bring it onto the sun side of the talent or the or wherever the strongest key is coming from, and you can shape and wrap that light using a reflector or even using another source of light. And so that kind of creates this sort of nice highlight, lights up the face very nicely. You get the eye light in there because of the reflector, the other source of light, and it falls off into shadow, creating that contrast. So you've got dark, you've got light, dark, light, and you've kind of created that dimension within your photo. So sort of a simple technique, you know, it takes one light, or the sun in this case, a reflector, or your key light, if it's an interior, behind your sort of talent. Another sort of cinematic lighting technique or natural light is it's something similar. In this case, we've got this light that's on the edge here as more so of a rim light, and that's sort of creating this contrast on the side of her face. You see that right there on the side of her dress and on the top of the chair here. Those little highlights kind of creates that contrast. And it's, you know, a bit different than the sun wrap. In this case, we're having the strong source of light come here, create that edge, but then we're also filling or keying her face with this light here. And that key light is essentially prismos going through a scrim, which are two 1x1 lights. They're really strong, really great. And the scrim softens them off, and you can kind of see the fall off very gradual until you see that sort of sharp, bright area on the other side. So this is sort of another way using continuous light to create something similar to what you could do with flash. And I don't think, you know, I don't think any differently if people choose to use continuous light versus strobes or anything like that. I mean, if you're doing sort of continuous and you want to grab some BTS video with your camera, or you're a hybrid shooter and you may be doing a bit of both, using continuous light in this way and shaping it in this way is really helpful. Also, with using continuous light, you can see how the light falls on your subject and adjust accordingly. With strobes, you have to rely on the modeling light. Sometimes it's not strong enough and you really can't see where the shadows may fall. So using continuous light in this case might be a benefit to you. So these are just two ways that I kind of used continuous light in sort of a cinematic or film way to basically light a set for portraits or for sort of a tableau type shoot. So I hope you guys found this helpful, and you know, maybe you might want to consider using the sun wrap or the sun sandwich or any of that type of lighting techniques in your next shoot. Thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.